Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Angus and Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you try their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, of course the king of all those cowboy cut and tomahawk kit ribeyes, probably the best you've ever had, certainly the best I've ever had as well. Also, those Angus and Prime Wagyu burgers, certainly the best. Find out what's for dinner, 702-799-9935, 702-799-9935, again, 702-799-9935, or check them out online, of course, at uppercutchops.com. That's uppercutchops.com, and tell them the circus sent you. What a great name. I just love that name. Very catchy. All right, a big welcome into everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates from coast to coast, all of our independents, Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, WOW, Cable, and Time Warner affiliates in select markets, as well as hotel television in all 210 Nielsen-rated markets. We're here with a very special guest. In fact, let's let him introduce himself.
Steve Garvey, great to be with you.
All right, it's Steve Garvey, folks. And Steve has an incredible background. In case you've been living under a rock, he's kind of done it all on the baseball field. And look, we're going to go over some of this, but folks, make sure you pay attention because there was a different kind of player when Steve was playing, and there wasn't this load management thing and all this other crap. Well, we've got these mandatory sit-out days, and well, it's okay. You can make a bunch of errors because you hit a bunch of home runs, and that's all right. There's a differential. So, Steve, welcome into the show, and thanks for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you very much. And even in your beginning, you're talking about some important topics that, are addressed in not only baseball, but the sports world now about, it seems to be the joke now, players get paid more to play less. And you just mentioned load management. I think if any of us guys would have gone into Tommy Lasorda's office and said, "Hey, Tommy, I want to talk about my load management," he would have said, "Get your load out there and I'll tell you when you can get off the field."
You got that.
But you're right. It was a different era that I had the opportunity and honor to play in. And of course, but my history goes way back to 1956, growing up in Tampa, Florida, when my dad, who was a Greyhound bus driver, came home, I think it was March 27th. The reason I know that is we did this charming book called My Bat Boy Days. But Dad sat down at dinner and he looked at me and he said, "Son, you want to skip school tomorrow?" And I went, "What? You never said that before, Dad. Well, what would we do?" He said, "Well, I've got a charter to pick up the Brooklyn Dodgers from the Tampa airport and take them to St. Pete to play the Yankees in an exhibition game. And I think it might be a fun father and son day." And it surely was. The next day we picked up the bus and drove to the tarmac of Tampa International Airport, and about 8:15 in the morning, the K. O'Malley 1 landed, which was the Dodger plane, the only team in baseball to have their own plane. And I taxied up, and while Dad and I were standing in front of the bus, and I was holding my Topps baseball cards, off came Walter Alston, the great manager, and Reese, and Hodges, and Snyder, and Ferrillo, and, of course, Jackie Robinson, and Campanella. And that day was my baptism. I actually had a chance to bat boy for them. Jackie had picked up a bat and started to sit down, wasn't looking, and he sat on my lap, and he goes, "Sorry, son, I'm sorry." I said, "That's okay, Mr. Robinson." I'm thinking, show and tell on Monday. Nobody's going to believe this. But sitting next to the boys of summer, these iconic gentlemen from that era, and they had just beaten the Yankees for the first time in the fall of '55, was something that, although I didn't know the magnitude, was probably the defining moment in my life in terms of that evening going to sleep and falling in love with baseball.
I have a similar background when it comes to my father was a driver too. He drove a truck for 12 hours a day, and then he drove a taxi for 4 hours a day, right? And so as the son of a driver, did you ever drive around with your father on the bus? Because I drove with my dad on the truck all over the country.
Yeah, well, Dad, after that first day, and ironically, our family was from New York. Dad was a Brooklyn Dodger fan because his father was a Brooklyn policeman, and my mother was a big Yankee fan because they lived in Baldwin, Long Island, which is on Route 27 on the way to the Hamptons. And and she was a Yankee fan, and my grandpa Joe was too. So we had roots in New York, and that's why it was ironic that. And Dad was so excited to have a chance to drive around the Brooklyn Dodgers that day. But after that first day, the dispatcher for Greyhound knew that Dad, loved the game, and he would give them the Detroit Tigers that were in Lakeland, Florida, if they were traveling someplace, or the Cardinals over in St. Pete, the Cincinnati and White Sox in Tampa. So Dad had a chance to travel and to drive probably half a dozen teams, arguably a dozen times in the spring, and take little Stevie along with him.
That's great stuff. And the funny thing is, when we think about what is it like to go with a parent on the road and see what they do. When you're just a little kid, I remember the first time I went on the truck, my dad was delivering ice cream somewhere around the city of Chicago. That's where I'm from. And I didn't realize that those trucks had really no shocks on the seats. I didn't even know what that meant. And the whole thing was just shaking. It was unbelievable. And I got sick the first time, but never again did I ever get sick.
Yeah. Well, of course, hear about truck drivers and bus drivers, and then you realize, like you said, when you're with Dad and you've got these tons of this big vehicle that you're maneuvering around and end up parking in spaces that you never would have, trying to do a 3-point park with just a regular sedan is tough enough, or your father with a truck. So you get to learn and appreciate the difficult nuances of what your father does. And my mother was a working mom. She was a assistant to the president of an insurance company, so she would talk about how trying her days were and trying to help him be successful in the company. So I grew up with two very hardworking, at that time, what middle class was. And as an only child, and it's God's little joke, I end up with 25 guys a day for 20 years playing baseball. And then I have one daughter and two daughters and three daughters, end up with 5 daughters, and then finally 2 sons. So God kept a balance in my life. And now I've got 7 grandchildren. So I've got 6 grandsons and the princess, 1 granddaughter now. So I finally picked up another closer and a hybrid player for the team. But, that's the journey of life. There always seems to be a balance somehow, some way. But beginning with my life in baseball and the journey I've been in and the wonderful family, I've learned a lot about life and a lot about America. I thought one time to try to figure out how many cities I visited because of baseball, and it's over 110 with Major League Baseball, playing in the minor leagues, speaking, which I do a lot of motivational speaking. And the one common denominator is our national pastime, through wars and depressions and financial disasters. There's been one true constant, and that's the game of baseball, because I think it's a lot like life. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You have to constantly get up each day and fulfill your obligations. The most important team is your family. And ironically, with children, our greatest compliment is when somebody compliments our children. And, life is complex, but I think if we realize that faith and a dedication to this country are the most important things, and everything comes into perspective.
Steve, I would like to say in our last couple of minutes of the segment, I'd like to say that me growing up, and I remember as a young baseball player in Little League Baseball, etc., we always looked up to those players at that time. And as a little kid, you'd run up there, hey, could you sign this for us, and so forth. And it was a great thing because the players interacted with the fans in a very different way. And now, mind you, I think you've got me by about 18 years. So when I was a little kid, look, I would go to Wrigley Field. I watched Rick Monday and Bill Madlock and the gang, whatever, right? And Rick ended up playing with you. And, over in L.A. And, I think about the players and their attitudes then. And when we come back from break, I want you to pick up on this a little bit, because the players' positions with the fans was one of, you were really, whether you wanted to be or not, you were a role model, but it's almost like you relish that. You like that. And you like signing things. And in today's time, I want you to compare and contrast what it's like to go to a ballpark today with the netting all around the field, and now you have to pay for signatures and all this other garbage. And I want you to come back here. We're going to go to break here in just a moment. But I want you to talk a little bit about that experience as you experienced it going up through the system, even as a kid, right? And then let's think about that in today's terms, because I got to tell you, as a fan of baseball, I played a little bit myself, and I have to say that it is a very different experience today. And I think the kids today are getting a fraction of the experience when you were playing, when I was watching, and I was the little kid, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, we're going to be back here with the great Steve Garvey, who should be in the Hall of Fame, by the way. We'll be back here in just a few moments here on the Sports Circus. Lots more to come. You don't want to miss this one, folks.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America, with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at 702-799-9935. Again, 702-799-9935. Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UppercutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UppercutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UppercutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average and best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UppercutChops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at UppercutChops.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. This segment brought to you in part by our special guest, and that's Steve Garvey. Folks, we don't have a sponsor. He is the attraction for the show today. So, Steve, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to everybody that's watching us on television and radio and everybody else streaming on Pick Your Favorite Streaming Platform. Steve, I know we're short on time, so we got basically this segment here, so I just want to go through this right away. In the last segment, I did mention about the experience for kids, and that's where we left off. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about what it was like then when you were playing versus what it's like possibly today for kids. And even
well,
for
of course, growing up as a bat boy for the Brooklyn Dodgers and then LA Dodgers in spring training, you were around a different generation. Obviously, the economics were much, much different. A player would be making $15,000, $20,000, in the 50s. And then, of course, Koufax and Drysdale pushed the 100,000 limit there in the 60-63 area. But it was a time when the players would actually live in the city. A lot of those players stayed in Brooklyn, and they worked for different entities and promotions and so forth. And the same way in the early days of Los Angeles in that era. That era ended probably towards the latter part of the 60s. And it was a time when you had to interact with the fans because you realized the fans were the conduit to the success of your franchise and organization. And the O'Malleys and the Bushes and, all these owners knew that. They encouraged their players. They were very community friendly. And just watching Reese and Hodges interact with the fans really taught me that. And I would think someday if I'm a major league player, I'm going to do that too. And I never forgot that. And I thought it was a big part of my career was that the fans knew that I was always accessible. I was always available. I always had time to sign a signature. Now, if I did get on a bus or it was raining, I would tell them, just mail me or, just yell at me next time and you get the first autograph. But when the fans know that, they realize that you not only care about what happens on the field, but you care about them. And they're the single most important element, not only in baseball, but in sports.
So in today's time, with all the netting around, look, there's a disclaimer on the back of the ticket, and it says basically, watch your ass. It is what it is, right? But ultimately, nowadays, you've got protective netting around. Everybody's taking selfies. Everybody's doing everything seemingly except watching the game. And so the element of the game view in itself is really been virtually flushed down the toilet because now it's all the corporate seats that are out there. They put people in that are there for meetings. They don't really participate like they did back maybe when you were playing or when you were a kid.
Well, I think the most important thing is the O'Malleys would always cut off their season tickets at about, if it's at 52,000, about 30,000. So that every night there was 20,000 plus individual tickets available. And there are some teams now, like the Dodgers, still have significant season tickets, but they try to make that available, maybe 15,000. The Padres and the emergence of how good that team is, they could have sold out almost all of the 42,000 seats this year, but they made it, they cut it off just to make sure that anybody who wanted to buy a ticket could. So I think this is the social responsibility to the fans and the public. It's good business. And again, baseball being our national pastime, I think is still the single sport that's the most inclusive and has the most influence in our society in terms of all races, creeds, and religions.
Steve, it's funny, you bring up the Padres, and of course, we've seen the resurgence of the Padres, and actually, something happened when you went there. I think there was something with the Girl Scouts, right?
Right.
Tell everybody a little bit about that.
Well, my contract ended in 1982. It was a 6-year contract, and we were able to, and thanks to Al Campanis, keep a group together almost 10, 11 years. I would add one player, Dusty Baker or Reggie Smith or whomever, Rick Monday, but that was the golden era from about 73 to 85. So up until 82, the first player that was allowed to get away was Davey Lopes. But remember, our infield was together 8.5 years. arguably the greatest infield in history, will never be approached 8.5 years. I think the other infield that may have been the leader in that category was maybe Baltimore with Belanger and Boog Powell and those guys. But think about it, 8.5 years, say Russell, Lopes, and myself. You had to stay healthy. You had to perform. Your team had to win, and the team had to have the foresight to be able to sign you up to 4- and 5-year contracts.
Right.
So that golden era set the tone. But then with the evolution of cable television in the late 80s, that's really when the business of baseball took off in the economics. And you're talking about the interaction between the player and the fans and the netting and all that. As the players started to get remunerated more, the salaries were bigger, the profits of the club were bigger, there became a wanted or unwanted isolation of the players and the ability to interact with the fans. Certain teams, like the Dodgers and Guggenheim, are trying to do the best they can. A lot of teams are. But it's just the natural instinct now to have the players sequestered post-game conference, press conference. They go out a side entrance to a private parking lot so that the teams have to find ways prior to the game or on weekends out in the community, and the Dodger Foundation does a great job of exposing the players and former players to the fans, because that feeling of family perpetuates and is a big reason why franchises and individuals are successful, because they get it.
Okay, a couple of quick questions because I know we're running on time here. One question from Big Red Machine, go figure. Big Red Machine, that's Colonel Bucky. He wants to know what pitcher you had the hardest time with.
Well, I think I faced 13 or 14 Hall of Fame pitchers, and I always say Phil Niekro, because he threw the knuckleball and threw it exceptionally well, right? And it fluttered up there, and he didn't know where it was going, and the catcher didn't know where it was going, and you're supposed to hit it. So, and by the way, knuckleball pitchers are the only pitchers that want the wind blowing out.
Yes.
Because when you throw a ball that doesn't move, it'll be affected by that wind and dance more. Or, humid evenings. That's why Atlanta was so good for Phil, because the heavy air. He was the toughest for me, because I would watch sequences of pitchers and catchers, and I would be a guesstimator, and probably 85% of the time I would guess the right pitch. But with Phil, it was one pitch, and I would crowd the plate and spread out and wait as long as I could and try to take it the other way. And he would never throw me a 3-0 at fastball. Ron Say, 3-0, throw a fastball, Penguin would hit it out. Dusty Baker hit it out. I said to him one day, I said, hey, 3-0, you give all these guys around me a fastball. Yeah. And he gave me the best compliment. He said, Garv, you're not going to beat me. And I said, okay, I'll take the compliment.
That's interesting. It's kind of like taking the forearm. Darrell Evans was telling me about you giving him a forearm one time. He's like, well, he was a football player. I'm like, I know he's a football player. Very few people know that. So, Steve, one other question real quick, and it was from Joey, that guy over in Chicago. And he said, ask him, this is a quote, ask him about game fixing. Ooh.
Game fixing?
Yeah, I think what he's referring to is maybe pitchers being squeezed a little bit. Take about 30 seconds and maybe talk about that in your opinion, if you have an opinion on it.
I don't think there's any systematic collusion between baseball and the umpires to fix games. Absolutely not. I think that especially in terms of umpires, size, positioning of the umpire dictates where he'll call a pitch more of a strike than a ball, and that's up to the burden of we batters to find out in the first couple innings where the umpire's strike zone is.
Right.
And by the way, we're a game played by human beings. It should be umpired by human beings. We all make mistakes, but the umpires, as a rule, are exceptional in terms of 98%, 99% accuracy in their calls. Now, in a couple of years, that digital strike zone will come up, and it'll take away, any objectivity. There'll still be a home plate umpire to manage the game, but the game continues to get refined by technology, as we know. And maybe that's a discussion for next time. And see how this season goes in terms of changes in pitch counts and time and size of bases and doing away with a burden on the defense and no shifts.
So in my question, my final question, because I know you have to run, it's going to be about, as a former pitcher, I'm a former left-handed pitcher, and for me to throw to first base, it was a luxury because I'm looking right at the bag. Now with the current rule changes, I can only throw over there twice. The third time, obviously, it's going to count as a ball against me or something like that. But my problem is this. After the first time over, the runner knows I've got one more shot over there. But if I throw him twice over there, the runner could literally just start walking right off. As soon as the pitcher gets in a set position, he could just go. It doesn't matter because now the strategy of the game has been compromised. What do you think?
Well, as you can see, everything's built for offense now. And the addition of added base running. So now what has to happen is the pitchers have to adjust. You're going to see more quick pitches home. You're going to see more lingering, even though they have so many seconds to throw the ball. Everything is built for offense now. It was built for launch angles and home runs over the last 6 to 8 years, changes in the ball. So let's see. Again, by the middle of the season, you'll get a lot of feedback, and so will I. And we'll see where the next step is for baseball.
All right, Steve, we want to have you back. Make sure that we get ourselves coordinated so we can bring you back and we can carry on this discussion, all right?
I'd love to.
That sounds great. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, the great Steve Garvey, and we're going to be back here on the Sports Circus in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average and best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
Sports Circus. I'm the Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at Cali Vegas, helping people create and host their very own radio, TV, or multimedia talk shows. Cali Vegas can help with everything they need to get out of sitting in hours of traffic, commuting back and forth to the same old boring job, and host their very own talk show in their very own home studio. For more information, contact Cali Vegas at 949-445-1119. That's 949-445-1119. Or better yet, email them at info@calivegas.com. Info@calivegas.com. That's C-A-L-I Vegas.com. All right, a big welcome back to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates and independents from coast to coast. Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Time Warner, and Wow Cable Television, as well as hotel television in every Nielsen-rated market, 210 cities across America. That is one enormous audience, gaining about 4 million impressions per hour. Big number. Nobody else does that, folks. I don't care who this is. Pick your favorite network. Pick your favorite guest or show or whatnot. They don't get those impressions. We, the Sports Circus, get those impressions. Yes! So, folks, last couple segments, we have the great Steve Garvey on. And, in case you don't know anything about his background, I mean, look, this guy, he's done it all on the baseball field, right? Lifetime batting average, just under 300, 294, 272 home runs, 1,308 RBIs, played for the Dodgers for a whole bunch of years, then goes a little bit south, goes to play in San Diego, gets to a World Series there. By the way, he won a World Series with the Dodgers in 81. As a matter of fact, also was the National League Most Valuable Player, two-time National League Championship Series Most Valuable Player, 4 Gold Gloves. 4, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. 4 Gold Gloves. The Roberto Clemente Award, San Diego Padres even retired as number 6. Now, the only reason the Dodgers haven't retired as 6 is because he has fallen a little bit short on the Hall of Fame ballots whenever he's been, of course, in the running for this, which has been for many years. So the Dodgers policy, as I understand it, is they will retire the number for Hall of Fame players, which, it's not really the worst thing. But also, in 1984, Steve Garvey became the only first baseman in Major League Baseball history to commit no errors while playing in 150 games or more. That's unbelievable. When you think about today, how many players... Here, let's take the alleged best player in baseball, and that would be Mike Trout, I guess. People say that. Wow, he's the best in the business. Yeah, he can't stay healthy. Right? And if you have a fantasy baseball team, you know exactly what that means, because this guy is on the shelf every year. I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Mike Trout has played one full season. Not one full season, every game, 162 games. He has not, in my opinion. I don't believe it. I don't recall saying it. If I'm wrong, correct me right here on Instagram or on Facebook or on AMP TV. Or you can watch us at the Sports Circus, on Twitch as well. We're everywhere, folks. You can't get away from us. The fact is, you can also email us, info@thesportscircus.com. I don't believe Mike Trout has played every game in a season. And this guy's making how much money? I think it's about, $60,000 per at bat, some crazy number like that. And if that's the case, if my calculations are right, it appears to me that Artie Moreno has given this guy, $20-odd million to sit his butt on the bench for rehabilitation. Unbelievable. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but then again, it doesn't matter, because tally up all of his at-bats and then that he missed, right? You can estimate that. You can extrapolate that from all his statistics and what the Angels have done throughout his career, how many at-bats he would have gotten, right? The reality is, if this guy's missing all of these games, and he's the alleged best player in baseball. He's an outfielder, for Christ's sakes. Steve Garvey played third base and he played first base. This guy, in the entire season, did not make one error. Oh, and by the way, he played the season as well. Kind of like a guy by the name of Cal Ripken Jr., right? Got to remember a guy like him, Mr. 2131, breaking the record, right? Ironically, I have the official scorecard from the California Angels from that particular game that was played in Baltimore where he broke the record, right? And so you think about those guys from that era, And Garvey played a very, very long time. And as a matter of fact, his first appearance, if I'm not mistaken, was back in 1969, the year of the Miracle Mets. He came up, I think it was the 1st of September. 1st of September, and he played all the way through from September 1, 1969, all the way until May 23rd, 1987. You're talking 18 years of this guy doing it in Major League Baseball, doing what he's supposed to do, doing his job, not complaining about, oh, I've got to have a day off. He doesn't do that. Players back then didn't do that. In today's time, that's why I asked Steve about that from the fans' experience. The fans' experience is very different today than when I was a kid 100 years ago, back when Steve was playing in the 1970s and 80s and whatnot. When I was a kid in the 1970s, I think about running up to those guys, hey, could you sign the ball, whatever for me, And look, we weren't able to take selfies. All we had was possibly, if we were smart enough, to bring some kind of a pen with us, right? We didn't have Sharpies or anything like that. We had a pen, and hopefully they had a reasonable surface to write on. Otherwise, they would write on your hat, they would write on your shirt, they'd write on your arm, but then you couldn't wash your arm, if you know what I mean. It was always something like that. But more importantly, getting an autograph from a player back then, first of all, didn't cost you anything. And secondly, the players didn't make anything, right? There's actually three pieces to that puzzle. The players did it because they wanted to do it. The fans wanted them because they wanted those as keepsakes. Hell, I still have a Walter Payton signature back from when I was a kid, right? When we think about these things, and these are the most coveted things as kids, boy or girl, doesn't really matter. And even adult back then, these are the people we looked up to because they were the superstars. And unfortunately, in today's time, you have to pay for signatures. You have to pay for everything. And let's face it, that payment even goes up, in my opinion, just as Joey, that guy from Chicago, said his question, ask him if the games are fixed. Ask about game fixing is what he said. He sent that in on Instagram. Everybody check us out at TSC Show on Instagram. We have about 40,000 followers. You can be one of those too. Anyway, the point is, when we think about the money flow, we ask ourselves, why are the casinos involved? Ooh, I don't know. Why do you think?
Show me the money!
It could be a little bit about money. It may not be. I don't know. But what I can tell you is the lineup cards in Major League Baseball must be turned in 90 minutes before the first pitch. Why is that? Pause for a moment and think. Follow the money. Follow the money. Now, Steve had said, oh, no, it's the human piece. And I believe that's Steve's position. My position, because I'm here in Las Vegas, I think very differently. I grew up on the west side of Chicago. I think very differently than the utopia that some people live within. But I believe that the games are absolutely compromised, and they're typically compromised by the, in my opinion, of course, by the lowest paid person on the field, which, of course, is what? The umpire. Just like in football. We've seen the games, come on, folks. If you don't think that the NFL has those games fixed, I got to tell you, just get off the pipe. Get off the pipe because, in my opinion, those games are absolutely fixed. And I've even been told by players, former players, Super Bowl champion players, the games are fixed. Point blank. They said it on this particular show. And I'm not going to tell you which one. You're going to have to sift through a couple thousand shows and find out which player or players said the games were fixed. That's from the National Football League player. Yes, that's not me. That's not my opinion. That comes from somebody from, well, one of the teams, right? That's a Super Bowl champion. So I didn't make that crap up, but at the end of the day, I think baseball is absolutely compromised. I think the umpires compromise the pitchers. They squeeze the pitchers, meaning they shrink the strike zone on them. If maybe they need more runs scored, I don't know what that looks like, but it sure seems to me that the strike zone certainly gets smaller when the run total is a little bit low. Maybe the over and under, right, the total run scored needs to be increased. I don't know. Ask yourself why they increase the base sizes. Well, usually you have a bang-bang play at second base for a stolen base, for example, right? Well, guess what? Usually it's within about a foot or so. It's like really right there. From the timing to the catcher's throw to second base to the runner getting there, boom, it happens. That's why they call it a bang-bang play. Well, guess what? That extra 3 inches for the base. At first base, the extra 3 inches bigger for the base of second makes 6 inches, right? A half a foot. So that gives the runner a distinct advantage in that bang-bang play. So now the runner will get in there essentially a half a foot faster than they typically would, or better yet, they'd get there just a split second before, which is enough to make that stolen base actually happen. So therefore, baseball and Rob Manfred is absolutely compromising this game. It's an embarrassment. In my opinion, Rob Manfred should be fired because he's tinkered with the game, tinkered with the baseballs. Yeah, these live baseballs. We're going to get back to that in just a few minutes here on the circus. Nobody has the gonads to say it except me, and I'm saying it right now on our national coverage. Back here in a few minutes, folks. Don't go anywhere. Yes, those sounds are exactly what this game-fixing BS, in my opinion, is. How remarkably embarrassing. Do you believe that?
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
My favorite one had to do with the Green Bay Packers. And I love the fact that they dealt off Ty Montgomery because of a blown assignment. Green Bay isn't Green Bay unless they have a good running game. Then they can win 10 Super Bowls. The fact is, you don't have a running game. You've got 70% passing, and that's not where Aaron Rodgers needs to be. He needs to be in a position where he's got a running game to offset the passing game and so forth. I like the move. Green Bay didn't have a running game anyway, so all they're doing is saying, we're going to get rid of you because you don't follow instructions.
Well, he made one of the most boneheaded plays I've ever seen. There's 2 minutes and 5 seconds on the clock. They traded him on Tuesday.
They should have cut him on Sunday night.
He shouldn't have been on the plane back to Green Bay.
Right, they should have made him walk back to Green Bay.
No, it was a terrible play. Now, he's not a stupid guy. He went to Stanford. He's not a dumb guy.
He's not a dumb guy, but he doesn't follow instructions.
He made a terrible play.
The fact is he didn't follow instructions. And you say he's not a dumb guy. His own agenda he put ahead of his team.
I agree.
Thus, he is a dumb guy. Right or wrong?
Wrong. He just got selfish. You're not going to convince me that a guy from Stanford's a dum-dum.
No!
Yeah, this is Sidney Justin from the Miracles.
So you heard yesterday's show at Roy Firestone. Did you hear a little clip about him going into the office where Smokey was at? And that was really good material, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was really funny, man.
Yeah, and then you heard him.
I thought it was hilarious. It was cool, though. It was cool. Really cool story, man. I enjoyed listening to that.
Right, and then he gave a couple of bars. Can you give us a couple of more from Ooh Baby Baby? And let's see if you could do it better than Roy Firestone. Come on, man!
All right, you know what? Why not? I did you wrong. My heart went out to play, but in the game I lost you. What a price to pay. Hey, I'm crying. Ooh, baby, baby. How's that, man?
That's
Is that
incredible.
okay? Is that good enough?
That's incredible.
That's fantastic.
You know why? Because that's what you do. You're in the incredible business, Sid. That's awesome. Yes! Only on the Sports Circus. You're going to get sports? You get music?
Hey, this is Tommy John, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. This segment brought to you in part by the Sports Circus. Make sure you check out thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guest, our prior guest, of course, our recorded shows, which are podcasts, right? But they're not podcasts. Nonetheless, you can find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon, Audible, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. You name it, we're there. You can't get away from us. Also, make sure you go over to our partners page and check out our partners. Some of them have been with us since the very beginning, some of the biggest auto manufacturers, all the way down to the College of Southern Nevada Athletics, CSNCoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. Right here in the Las Vegas Valley, that's CSNCoyotes.com for the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Yes! All right, welcome back to everybody. You know who you are, watching on TV and radio. You know, a couple things. First, this segment was brought back by Tommy John. Hey, this is Tommy John, and you're listening to the Sports Circus. Funny thing, we had Steve Garvey on for the first couple of segments here on the show. Now, I didn't talk to Steve about this, but I'll bring Steve back, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about something that happened in New York way back in the day. In fact, I believe there was a scuffle between Steve Garvey and Don Sutton way back in the day. And if I'm not mistaken, Tommy John's name actually sort of came into an article about that, because as the article read, and as I recall seeing this on television when I was a kid, Steve Garvey apparently grabbed Don Sutton and essentially slammed him in and threw him into Tommy John's locker in New York on the team. So that's why it kind of came out there. It's kind of funny stuff. But anyway, my point with all this stuff is, look, back to Steve and baseball. Look, it was a different time. It was a different era. And the players were a part of something greater. Today, it's money, 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 money. It's ridiculous. So in the commercial break, I'm going to shift away from the baseball for just a moment here. In commercial break, we're talking a little bit about a new program that's going to be produced, aired, and distributed, broadcast and distributed by AMP TV. That's for all ages media programming television. That's AMP TV. Check them out on Facebook. AMP TV. You can also go to AAMP.TV as well. The point is, folks, we are going to produce a very different show that nobody has ever seen this kind of thing before. It's going to feature a very good friend of the show, kind of like a brother to me, and that would be Joey That Guy. And I can't tell you what it's going to be about other than a culinary theme to it. It'll be certainly entertaining. It'll be brought to you by a large food company, a very successful food company in the Midwest. It'll be distributed everywhere. A very exciting show. You've never seen anything like it. Not on the Food Network, not on this one, not on that one. None of those channels, none of those producers or these show creators, in air quotes, have come up with something like this. This is going to change the food programming industry. And when we talk about Hall of Fame players, well, how do we know they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Did they change the game? Well, this show is going to change the landscape for food programs. So for all you people that watch all those cooking shows, hey, they're good, whatever. They make me hungry, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I got to tell you, I feel great. But when I watch those, what do I want to do? I want to eat a bunch of food. I can't help myself. And what did I do today? Right here in Las Vegas, I went to my favorite cupcake place. I get nothing for saying this. Actually, they did give me a cupcake. Nonetheless, I went to the Cupcakery, and this is the original cupcake store. As I understand it, it was the first one really from coast to coast, the first dedicated cupcake store. And still today, they're just as good as many, many years ago when they started. The cupcakes are phenomenal. I love cupcakes. I love sweets. Anyway, I have sweet teeth, not a sweet tooth, if you know what I mean. That's why every year I go to Chicago for that proverbial candy convention. I think they call it Sweets and Snacks now. But nonetheless, really good stuff. But wait till you check out this new culinary-driven cooking type of show. It's really exciting. We're working on the creative part for it right now. I can't tell you what's going on with it yet, but this is going to blow you away. And yes, it will be brought to you by AMP TV. And of course, that's who's going to distribute it. But also, it's going to be tied to a remarkably successful food company based out of the upper Midwest. Folks, it's going to absolutely blow you away. I got to leave it like that. I can't say anything more until all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, all the paperwork is done. Because you know how it goes. As soon as you get it out there, everyone's going to steal the idea. Nope, not on this one. No, because we are first to market with it. And remember, either, like Ricky Bobby says, either you're first or last. Nobody remembers who came in second place. You remember who lost the Super Bowl 10 years ago? I don't. Remember who lost the World Series a couple of years ago? I don't. But we remember who won. Yes, that's the only thing that matters. Winning, yes, it's everything, in case you're keeping score. That's right. So by the way, folks, in case you missed part of the show today, if you're just tuning in a little bit late, yes, we had the great Steve Garvey on. And Steve, a 10-time All-Star. First baseman, third baseman with the Dodgers, also with the San Diego Padres. You know, he went to the World Series with the Padres, too. He won a World Series in L.A. Our current baseball guy is Darrell Evans. In fact, there was a press release that came out on Darrell Evans, and Darrell hit 414 home runs in Major League Baseball, played 20 years at the hot corner, 20 years at third base. Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, won a World Series, two-time All-Star, 4 Gold Gloves, just like Steve Garvey. But more importantly, Darrell Evans, who is our current baseball insider and analyst, there's a big press release came out. It went out to, I don't know, over 100 TV stations. Pick your favorite network affiliate in your favorite city. They picked it up. Whether it was CBS, NBC, ABC, the CW, they all picked it up. A bunch of independents picked it up too. It's crazy. It's on the Associated Press. Just go ahead and Google the Sports Circus or Sports Circus and Darrell Evans. And it was a phenomenal article and a great quote in there by him as well. Our baseball analyses are going to be done by Darrell, who hit 4 years in front of Hank Aaron. Hank, arguably the greatest player of all time. You know, a lot of people don't realize that Hank had well over 3,000 hits on top of his real home run record, because me personally, I don't recognize the broken home run record like a lot of other people because of the dubious question, were steroids involved? Performance-enhancing drugs. And you know, the worst part about all this is that you take a guy like Barry Bonds, who was a bona fide 5-tool player when he came up with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think it was 1986 he came up. You take a guy like Barry Bonds, man, this guy had it. He had it. The guy could run, the guy could hit, the guy could hit for power. He had a great glove. The guy just had the 5 tools. He had it. But then you had guys like Canseco that was starting to hit home runs, and McGuire that were hitting home runs. He's like, you know what? I'm getting left behind in this. And McGuire's playing right across the bay over in Oakland. Little did they know that he may have been juicing at that time. And so Bonds may have jumped in and said, hey, maybe I want to do that. I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't say that for sure, but it's my opinion, and I'm entitled to that. But the reality is, Barry Bonds did not have to take performance-enhancing drugs. Whether he did or not, I don't know. I wasn't there. The point is, he didn't have to. And Barry was a good enough player. Man, the guy had everything. He was way better than his dad, Bobby Bonds, and Bobby was a great player in Major League Baseball in the first place. I don't understand that. Now, you may remember Bobby. Bobby tilted his bat out a little bit. So when instead of being like this, everybody watching on TV, instead of having the bat on the shoulder, Bobby Bonds would actually tilt his bat out, which is the strangest thing I've ever seen. And I never understood why. I saw a lot of kids when I was a kid do the same thing. They would try to emulate what Bobby Bonds was doing. So he'd tilt his bat out and bring it back and hit. But I think what it was, maybe the rationale in his mind, I don't know. I haven't talked to Bobby Bonds. Maybe someday I will. The reality is, maybe since his bat is out, it's already in I wouldn't say a hitting position, but it's closer to a hitting position than having the bat back and having to bring the bat back versus having the bat already tilted out. And then you could essentially drop your hands and move them forward. I don't know. But technically, you're not supposed to drop your hands in the first place. Me as a pitcher, I loved when batters would drop their hands and then swing, because I knew likely they were going to pop the ball straight up in the air. That's usually what happens because they end up dropping their hands. A batter. So here, I'm throwing the ball at you, everybody watching on TV. All right, so I'm throwing the ball. I'm going to grab the White Sox one because I'm a White Sox guy. They throw the ball, and when the ball's coming, the batter would then drop their hands and then swing at it. So technically, you could see this. My hands are in a position, and the ball's coming in. They drop their hands, and then they swing, and the ball, they hit the top of the ball. And so unfortunately for the hitter, the ball is actually hit the bottom. Everybody watching on TV can see it. It hits at the bottom, so the ball goes straight up in the air. Guys like Jack Howell, who played for the California Angels, not the LA Angels, but the California Angels back in the day, Jack was notorious for popping the ball up. And so you think about that, but Bobby Bonds actually had his hands out, which technically he wouldn't really have to do a whole lot from a hitting standpoint. Either way, my point is this. Bobby was a great hitter. Mechanically, he was pretty sound, but he had a very strange way of hitting. Barry Bonds, on the other hand, a very compact swing, and the guy had a tremendous eye. So again, he had all the tools. He didn't have to, whether he did or not, I don't know, take performance-enhancing drugs. But you ask yourself about these records and these load management things. There's so many questions about baseball. I mean, we just run out of time whenever we talk about them. As a former player, I could talk about this till the cows come home. And guess what? The cows ain't coming home. We already know that. Right? But a round of applause for the cows anyway. So, folks, our baseball analyses will be done by Darrell Evans, the great Darrell Evans, 414 home runs, and 20 years as a player, 20 years as a manager and coach in professional baseball as well. So you're going to get a lot of good baseball insight from somebody that really knows what the hell they're talking about. I mean, they were in the rodeo for 40 years. Imagine 40 years in professional baseball. And he still is a consultant today for professional baseball. Tell you what, folks, that's going to do it for the circus today. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, and I hope you enjoyed our time with the great Steve Garvey. Nice round of applause for Steve Garvey joining us in the first couple segments of the show. And I'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. So until then, so long, everyone.
Dry-aged USDA Angus steaks and chops directly to your door without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at uppercutchops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at uppercutchops.com.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.